What's up, everybody? Welcome back for some DraftKings MMA DFS picks. It's Vegas 51, UFC Vegas 51. Belal Muhammad, Vicente Luque. We're here with the best bets, the card predictions, DFS lineup strategy, FanDuel, DraftKings, you name it. We're here to help you out. Prize picks, everything to get you set up for Saturday's fights. Welcome. I'm Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy, joined by Jake the Snake, owner of MMADFS.com. Jake, man, how you doing?
Pretty good, man. How you been?
All good. Busy week as always, and just an incredible amount of fighters to chart and look at this week. No cancellations. Uh, didn't help us out from a content creation standpoint, but a really interesting card. So let's just jump right into it. What we do in these videos, we break down the main event, what it means for bets and for DFS. Talk about all the newcomers on the card, what their outlooks are, some fights we want to target in DFS, and some best bets and some prize picks. So make sure you stay tuned throughout the entire video. So Jake, got to start with this main event. Vicente Luque, Belal Muhammad. Vicente Luque, a smallish favorite in this spot. Talk to me about the matchup and how you see it playing out for DFS.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty straightforward matchup. First of all, they've already fought once before. So, obviously, whatever happens the first time is definitely going to happen the second time, as was proven by last week. But so the first time they fought was back in 2016. Luque knocked out Belal in the first round. Only time Belal's ever been finished in his career. So, Luque's got that going for him. But the straightforward part is, Luque wins all of his fights from finishes early on. Belal wins all his fights by grinding out decisions. This is the first time Luque's ever headlined a UFC fight, so he's never been past the third round in his career. Whereas he's basically a guy that's going to weaponize his cardio. He's just going to go at you nonstop. So, I think it's pretty straightforward in the sense that, we're either going to get a Luque finish in the first few rounds, or if Belal can survive that, I think he's probably going to eventually grind out a grappling heavy decision. He's coming off a career best performance against Wonderboy, landed 7 takedowns, 12 minutes of control time, like a million ground strikes, nearly got a finish in that fight. That just shows his potential. Prior to that, we were just kind of, never impressed by Belal. So at least he put on an impressive performance to show his upside. Do I think he's going to do that here? Probably not. I think Luque is probably going to finish him. I think it's a step up in competition for Belal, but you never know. So, we have close odds. That kind of indicates that it could go either way. So both guys are pretty live in DFS. It's not like one of those weeks where we're just throwing away the underdog. So we've got 2 live 5-round fighters. For low risk, that means you stack it in DraftKings. It's probably going to be a pretty good stack week, so it makes for a good low risk week. In high risk, you're probably going to want one of these guys. At their pricing, it's going to be hard. If Luque gets a finish, he's going to score well. He's going to score over 100, especially on a slate like this. You're probably going to need him. If Belal wins, it's going to come in a 25-minute decision with a dozen takedowns. He's definitely going to score well. So if he wins, you're going to need him. So I think both guys are pretty interesting for DFS this week.
For sure. And do you think from a betting standpoint, I know people, especially on gambling Twitter, have to pick a winner on the side, right? I gotta back Luque, I gotta back Muhammad, and that's the only bet I make. But we're looking for ROI, we're looking for ARB opportunities. Like, to me, it seems like a very easy betting scenario where you just bet Luque inside the distance plus 130, plus 140, wherever you get it. You bet Bilal's money line. What is that now? Plus 130, around the same, right? And assuming Luque doesn't win a decision, you win the difference, right? That seems like an easy approach to this fight for me.
Yeah, you can definitely play both sides of this one if you want to grind out an ROI in betting. For sure.
Cool. So let's move on to the newcomers because this was the bane of our existence all week because we had to track down all these newcomers. We had a late addition to the card early in the week. So lots of guys we had to chart. So let's just walk through them, Jake, and we'll start from the highest price on DraftKings to the lowest price. And we'll start with Martin Budai, who is 9K against Chris Barnett. Just an incredibly funny image seeing these guys face off against each other at the weigh-ins. But Budai, talk to me about his style and what we can expect.
Yeah, so he's coming in 9-1. He's finished 8 straight opponents in the first 2 rounds. He actually started off in jiu-jitsu. He's a BJJ brown belt, which, sort of, sometimes we get guys like Vendera that are like, oh, you're a black belt, sure. But this guy can grapple a little bit. He's not like a great grappler, but when you got a heavyweight that can grapple, that always adds a little bit of an extra edge to him. So he does have that, but he only has one career submission win, but he could go to it if he needs it. Either way, he's coming off a weird round one KO win on the Contender Series where he basically got in the clinch and he just like threw 75 knees to the quad of his opponent until his opponent like couldn't stand anymore. And then with a few seconds left in the round, he threw one knee to his head and just dropped the guy. So not the most impressive win for a heavyweight. He wasn't going out there just like swinging fists. He actually got cracked early on. So just surviving was sort of impressive. But honestly, I feel like that kind of sums up his career. Like if you watch his fights, like a lot of times he's not winning or he's not looking great, and then he finds a way to win. So he's just sort of like a dude that grinds out finishes. Not overly impressive, and I think if he was in a tough matchup, I would not be excited about him. But just like the Ben Rothwell against Barnett fight, where we have the same size difference here. This guy's 6'4", cuts down to 265, so he's like a huge heavyweight. He's going to tower over Barnett. I mean, 7-inch height advantage. So yeah, I mean, this is kind of a good matchup, but we'll see about the talent long term for Martin.
A guy who's losing most of his fights until he gets the finish doesn't look that impressive. Exactly what we want from a popular 9K fighter, that's for sure. All right, so moving down the list, a bunch of returning fighters near the top of the pricing range. But as we get down to the $8,400 range, we start to get some more newcomers. Omar Gadziev against Bohayo, probably saying that wrong. Didn't consult my pronunciation notes before the show, so fire me if you need to. But two newcomers facing off against each other. The rare two back-to-back Dana White's Contender Series fighter. So really interesting matchup here. Talk to me about these guys.
I mean, it's even more rare that it's the co-main event. I mean,
Yes.
When do we ever see that with two debuting Contender Series guys? I mean, pretty nuts. But so we've got Omar Gadziev, undefeated, 13-0 record, Dagestani wrestler, combat sambo world champion. Just an overall stereotype for your Russian fighter. Yeah. But really good at landing takedowns, great at controlling opponents. If that wasn't clear by that first part, 11 wins have come in the first two rounds. He's only been to 2 decisions. He was one of the few people to land a knee bar in the Contender Series. Just an overall guy that's efficient at landing takedowns, great at top pressure, good at finding ways to finish fights. So, I mean, I think we've all seen this story before. I would say overall, he's a guy that's going to score well in DFS when he wins, and he's a guy that might look bad in fights where he can't get it to the ground.
For sure. And his opponent, Bahayo, got the win, didn't get a contract, came back a couple weeks later, finishes up a weight class, gets a contract finally. I could feel like I feel the same as you. If this stays on the feet, we could feel like this line was completely wrong. Or if it goes to the ground, then we feel like, oh, this line probably wasn't big enough. So, what do you think of the chances he has of getting this win?
So I couldn't decide if the first name or the second name was harder to say here, but I'll go with Baralo.
I didn't say the first name, which should probably tell you.
Ko?
Real professional work over here. This is why you tune in every Friday.
Yeah, didn't have time to run that guy's name but through the Anik sound check. Yes. But coming in 10-1, like you said, back-to-back Dana White Contender Series wins. The first one I thought was pretty disappointing. It was at 185. He won the first 2 rounds, and he just coasted down the end or down the stretch. And afterwards, he was like, yeah, I got tired in the 3rd round, but that won't happen again. But it's definitely happened before if you watch his tape. So
right.
Somewhat questionable cardio in 3rd rounds of fights, which is interesting because he used to fight at 170 when he started his career, moved up to 185 later on, and then had that one fight at 205, the short notice second Contender Series fight, where he kind of took on a guy that gets knocked out all the time. So I wasn't overly impressed by that, but he did get the first round knockout up at 205, showing that, he does have power on the feet. He's got kind of a weird, like, karate style stance that probably isn't great for DFS, honestly. He's kind of a counter striker, a little bit of a weird guy to hit. So he's not going to get huge striking totals most of the time. But overall, well-rounded, judo, BJJ black belt, trains with Damian Maia. So, I mean, he's got lots of pluses. I'm not that excited about him, but I would say if he can keep it on the feet, I think he he could probably win a striking battle here, but I think it would probably be a disappointing one, most likely.
I think that's fair. And the cover boy of the plug this week, and I was bring up the plug really quickly so you can see the top. It is Trey Ogden making his debut. True grapplers matchup here against Jordan Leavitt. So I know obviously you like him. The model likes him. What gives you the confidence that Ogden can out grapple Leavitt this week?
Yeah, I mean, I think Ogden is just overall, he seems like a better fighter than Leavitt. Every time we watch Leavitt, we're like, oh man, like this guy's like super unrefined, like no striking, really sluggish on the mat. I mean, if you watch Leavitt's last couple fights, it looks like he's fighting underwater or something. Just not impressed by him. His two wins came against, washed up fighters. And the one time he took on a grappler, Leavitt got absolutely dominated on the mat. He got taken down all four times on his opponent's attempts. He got controlled for like double digit control time minutes. And then you see Ogden, and he's just way more efficient with his grappling. He comes in 15-4 with 11 submissions. The one concern is three of his four losses have also come by submission, which is why he's a guy that you want to hedge, going against a guy like Leavitt, who even if he has a lot of holes in his game, he's still shown that he can land submissions. He's coming off like the inverted triangle submission over Matt Sales, which when I was rewatching, I was like, man, that does not look that tight. And then they're like, oh yeah, he's not going to get this. And it's like, oh yeah, Sales
Immediately
taps.
got it.
Immediately taps. I feel like that was just Matt Sales being terrible more than Leavitt being great. But you never know. I mean, maybe Ogden falls into a guillotine and Leavitt chokes him out. I mean, I think that however this fight ends, it's going to be a submission for one of these two. And I think it's going to be Ogden. Like, I really like him. He's coming off the Fury FC lightweight championship where that was in front of Dana White and that got him the contract. I thought he looked good there. He was coming off an extended layoff going into that. It was not a problem for him at all. He landed a second round submission. He's a James Krause disciple, trains with the Glory MMA and fitness team. And I believe he actually opened up his own gym a little while ago nearby, but still trains with them. So, yeah, I mean, overall, just impressive grappler. And I think he's going to have a striking advantage on the feet in this one as well, which pretty much everyone will against Leavitt.
Yeah, exactly. And finally, the late replacement we alluded to earlier, Ange Losa fighting Munir Lazez. Pretty interesting matchup here. Losa just fought a couple of weeks ago, and now he's back at it here. What's his outlook, his background, and you think the chances of? Again, it's rare for a short notice replacement to get a win, but what does he have to do to get it done here?
Yeah, I mean, he literally fought 2 weeks ago from tomorrow. He took this fight on 4 days' notice, which is kind of crazy. And normally we'd be like, oh yeah, he's got no chance. But he looks good.
Yeah.
He's 8-2. One of his losses was to Jack Della Molina on the Contender Series, and he's the only guy to ever take Jack Della to a decision. So I mean, that shows he's durable right off the bat. Like, he got caught some in that fight, like, no question about it. A lot of guys would have gone down. I mean, this guy's tough. He's a former training partner of Kamaru Usman. He's still at Sanford MMA training with Gilbert Burns. Really powerful striker. And a lot of his training partners talk about how he used to be pretty wild, and he's kind of dialed it back and reined it in some, which kind of shows in his record because his first 6 fights all ended in first round wins, and his last 4 have all gone the distance. So, I mean, I don't know if that's good or bad, but he's definitely dialed it back some and never been finished in his career. Really durable. I mean, he's got the striking, but he's also a decent wrestler. Like, we saw a bunch of his wrestling in his last match, and now he's going against a one-dimensional striker. So I think he's going to utilize his wrestling, but the one concern is he took the fight on short notice. So if there is a cardio concern for him, it's kind of hard to put on a dominating wrestling match if you gas out halfway through. But if he doesn't, and he claims he's still in good shape from just fighting, he was just in camp, then I think he could really win this fight through wrestling, because Lazez is a pure kickboxer. So I think Losa has an edge in this fight. I mean, he's also a powerful striker, but I think his wrestling is going to be kind of the key in this one. And, just really powerful guy. I mean, I think physically he's impressive. And then, if you watch his tape, I would say overall just kind of a well-rounded game.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe he doesn't get this win just because of the situation, but definitely one of those guys that we want to target and look for in his second UFC fight. Now, let's talk about some fights that we want to target for our DFS lineups. Whoever wins likely scores well and may end up in the optimal lineup. Jake, give me 1 or 2 fights that you think really fit the bill outside of the main event.
Yeah, I mean, the one we've already talked about a little bit is the Ogden Leavitt fight. I
Yep.
mean, I think that the winner there, is very likely going to score well, and not just because I think it ends in a submission. Even if it doesn't, we could see a ton of takedown, a ton of control time. So the winner could even score well in a decision. And you look at their pricing; it's really not that hard for the winner there to get into winning tournament lineups. Another one I'm looking at is the Rafa Garcia Jesse Ronson fight. I think that one's pretty interesting. It's another one where the pricing is pretty reasonable, so it makes it a little bit easier for the winner to get in. And, we've got Garcia, who's just going to try to grind out a decision with a ton of takedowns. He's attempted 12 takedowns in each of his last two fights. And then we've got Ronson, who's a finisher, coming in. I think like 9 of his last 10 wins have come early. Coming off a 2-year suspension, though, which is always worrisome. It was a PED suspension. Hasn't fought since he finished Nicholas Dalby. I think it was July 2020, sometime around then. So it's been a little under 2 years. I think it was like a 20-month suspension. Could be wrong on that one, but pretty impressive finisher. He's actually 0-3 plus a no contest in the UFC. So if you pull up his like DraftKings stat sheet, all of his scores are like 20. So he looks terrible on there. But the line actually flipped in his favor, which I was sort of annoyed about because I thought he would have been a little bit under the radar before that. Obviously, that's going to drive up his ownership, but now he started as a plus 110 favorite underdog, and now he's a negative 120 favorite. So decent line move for Ronson there. But I think either guy, whichever one wins, probably going to score well as long as it's not a Ronson decision. I think that's the one way the fight could bust.
Yeah, and interesting to see a line move for a guy who hasn't fought in 2 years, right? So, and again, we know the field's going to jump on the line move, quote unquote, the mispriced fighter. So, I'm sure we'll see a little bit of ownership on Ronson as well. All right, let's close out the show with a couple of bets and some prize picks. You see the promo code here on the top right of your screen. Use code Occupy Prize Picks. You can use the link in the description below. Prize Picks allows you to parlay different prop bets, different sports, pretty different experience than your typical DFS site. Go check it out. Use code Occupy. Get a 100% deposit match bonus. And Jake, we talked about it last week. They have some pretty soft lines for UFC in particular, and they offer boost all the time, so you can always pair those up. Give me one, maybe two prize pick plays that you really like this week for UFC.
Yeah, so I think one that immediately stood out to me was Bueno Silva under 1.5 takedowns. Not only has she never landed a takedown in the UFC, she's never attempted one. So I don't know where they came up with
So
that
curious.
line. I mean, they could have made it zero point 0.5 and I would have bet the under, but 1.5, like that's insane. So she's definitely getting like 8 takedowns
Yeah.
now. But great line, great line. Really like that one. And then there's some really soft point overs on like people we like Ogden, like he basically just needs to win to hit his over. So I think you can get some really soft ones on the fantasy point overs over on Prize Picks.
Absolutely. And we'll close out the show with our stream parlay. I'll pick a side. You pick a side, Jake. I think my side hit last week, not to brag. I'm not sure if your side
It
hit.
did, it did. Yeah, Lad blew it for us. We had
She
Lad.
she blew it in more than one way because if she wins a decision, it's a 6-figure score in my direction. So, but obviously the stream parlay is way more important. So let's try to hit it this week. So I'm going to go with. We didn't really talk about this fight. It's actually fighting up at heavyweight, right? Which was interesting. Devin Clark, William Knight. I like Clark a lot. The model likes Clark a lot. So I'm gonna go Clark in the decision plus 135.
Yeah, man, what a weird fight with Knight. Missing weight by 12 pounds in his last fight. That fight got moved up to heavyweight. He weighed in at like 218 then. Now this fight was just originally placed at heavyweight. Also kind of a short notice fight. He weighed in at 251 today. Man, that
Yeah.
guy put on 33 pounds the last 2 months. Like,
Yeah.
I mean,
Wow.
he looks large. So that's an interesting one with Clark. But all of Clark's wins come by decision. So I think that's a good bet right there. When you get the favorite at plus money and 100% of his UFC wins have come by decision. So I like that. And a guy I've been talking about a lot today. I'm going to go with Ogden submission at plus 380. I think that's a good line. Like, honestly, that line should be like plus 200 or something.
I agree. Very interesting line. We always see these discrepancies between the money line and the method of victory, especially when one fighter or the opponent shows a propensity towards some type of finish method or decision. So, yeah, very interesting. I like that bet as well. So, what's that pay us out?
So that's going to be plus 1028. So just over 10 to 1.
We like those. we will take those and we will hit those. So let's get it done. So that'll do it for this video. What you see on screen here is the daily plug, occupyfantasy.com. Jake comes in and writes this every single Friday night. Top plays, lineup strategies, best bets, prize picks plays, everything all in one article that you need to dominate the UFC slate. Check out Jake's site, MMADFS.com, where he goes into even further detail, gives out even more bets and picks. Check out his premium content over there. Once again, that's MMADFS.com. If you like the content, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Get notified when we go live, upload any new videos. Give us a thumbs up if you appreciate the UFC content. If you have any questions about this slate, betting, DFS, whatever it may be, you can comment on this video below. The best way, however, is to join our Discord server. Click the join button below this video, occupyfantasy.com/Discord. Chat with other members of occupyfantasy.com as well as us, and we'll be in there sweating the fights on Saturday nights. So for Jake, you can follow him on Twitter at DFS_MMA. I'm at Brian Jester FF, and we're at Occupy Fantasy. Appreciate you listening as always, and good luck and enjoy the fights.